Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to the 55th edition of the Leader Post Rider Rumblings video podcast. That's a wordy title. I think of a better one. Each week, we pick a corresponding player number that equates to the number of podcasts, and we salute that player. And we're saluting Roger Aldag in a different way, but being it's the 55th podcast, we salute number 55, Mario DeMarco, one of four Rough Riders players who was killed in the 1956 air crash. Mario DeMarco, Gord Sturtridge, Mel Beckett, and Ray Cernick were killed. And there's number 55, Mario DeMarco. There's number 44, Roger Aldag. We've had not necessarily complaints, but comments about why our background is so drab. So I found this thing lying around, this cardboard cutout of Roger lying around the office, and I thought this would provide us with some more colorful background than those beautiful shades. Blinds, whatever. So that's our background for today. Murray McCormick is with us, as has been the case for most of these 55 podcasts. And our special guest today, also our guest columnist throughout football season, is former Rough Riders general manager, Brendan Tamman. Brendan, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Not too bad, fellas. How are you?
We're fine, thank you. And Roger is fine as well, we presume.
Good.
So, you've been there, Brendan, losing a starting quarterback week 1, 2015. Sorry for the flashback, but what kind of position are the Rough Riders in now? You've lived this all too vividly 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's not the most comfortable position to be in, as you guys are well aware of. I mean, like I think most people understand, you're going to go through adversity at some point during the year. It's really discouraging to hit it in week 1, especially with your starting quarterback. So they've got some challenges ahead. There's no doubt, and they know that. I mean, they're knowledgeable of what they're doing. So, but it's a little bit of a bigger hill to climb now than it was.
4 years ago, you had Kevin Glenn as the backup. The year before, you were left with Tino Sinceri, etc. after Darian went down. Did the Rough Riders satisfactorily cover themselves in this situation, knowing of Zach Collaros' history, by having Cody Fajardo, Isaac Harker behind Zach as opposed to a veteran?
I'm not sure we can answer that just yet. I think there's some concern. There's no doubt about that. I think, what we learned after the 14 season was we weren't going to do that again. We just couldn't do that again, because when you're sitting in the GM's chair and the head coach's chair, when you meet with your president every week, it's not about your development or how you're doing or everything. It's about winning, flat out winning. Simple. You better win. So the good thing would be is to bring a young guy along that's going to help you win some games when needed. And I think the young guy they have there, Harker, he showed some signs. There's no doubt about that. But you have to be a little bit weary of that too. And what I mean by that is, we had a guy, and you guys are very familiar with him in Winnipeg, named Ryan Dinwiddie. And I believe we decided we were going to sit Kevin down at one point. He started off, I can't remember the year exactly, but Ryan went in his first game and was the player of the week. I don't know, he threw, and it was against Calgary too, and he threw for like 400 and some yards, and we were like, oh yeah, great. And then we went to Toronto the next week, and I think we scored 6 points. And what I mean by all this is the more you get on film, the more teams can adapt to you and know who you are. And I'm not saying they won't have an answer in Harker, but I don't know about you guys, but if you were to say in week 2, Isaac Harker or Cody Fajardo were going to be your starting quarterback in February, I'm not sure that would have met with a lot of positive vibes at that point.
It's not meeting with a whole lot of positive vibes right now. I think remember in 15 you didn't really recover from Darian's injury, did you?
No, we didn't. We didn't recover in 14, and part of that was we didn't have good enough depth behind him to the point of desperation when we had to sign Carey, which is what it is. But then in 15 we had Kevin, because the biggest thing we did at the end of 14 is that Corey and I agreed that we were not going to have that quarterback dilemma on our hands again. As luck would have it, we signed Kevin, which we thought was the best insurance policy we could get at the time, and he gets hurt, so we were done anyway. But it is what it is.
It's kind of interesting that Kevin's name kind of came up again this time around to replace as a possible replacement for Zach Collaros, that he's still kicking around the league, but he has retired. I hear there's not enough money involved. I don't think Kevin Glenn was even prepared to come back, and I don't think he'd be quite ready to step in to do anything for him right now. They do have Brian Bennett, who they signed, who I seem to remember in 17 being outstanding at minicamp, really good during training camp, and when the lights are on, he was really struggled. He struggled in the 2 preseason games and was released. So
he did throw a touchdown pass in that preseason, though, which is notable because that was it.
And he threw a touchdown pass last time Winnipeg was here in the preseason game, or a long pass, a 48-yarder. He was the one who threw that long bomb.
And he can play special teams.
And he can do a backflip. So I'd asked him if he did a backflip after the Riders called him, but he's the thing is, I know you and I know we've talked about Cody a little bit. They kind of signed him with this in mind that he could play, but maybe they thought they'd have all their punt returns to the 1 or 2 yard line, so they just have to go short yardage, and he wouldn't have to come out there and actually throw the ball. But I think they've got to go. I don't know if this is.
They've made this bed.
They've got to go with Cody. I don't think Isaac Harker, regardless of what we saw on in Thursday's game, is quite ready yet. I think maybe Brennan, you can answer this. Do you throw a raw rookie into a situation when you have a guy that's supposedly earned the position and see what he can do, or do you just go with Cody and do it the plan you've made out of training camp and try to ride it through? Maybe Cody Fajardo is ready to step up. Maybe it's his time, but I don't know what your thoughts are on Cody.
Well, I think they've acclimated Fajardo as their second string quarterback coming out of camp. So I think going into week 2, I think you have to start him. There's no doubt about that. And that's somewhat too of a reason to protect Harker, because like you just said, you don't really want to throw the kid, against Ottawa on Thursday night and here you go, just go to town. Yeah. At the end of the day, they got to do what's best, and they got to do what they think gives them the best, I believe, the best chance to win. So, it's tough. Hopefully Fajardo can do it. I mean, I have reservations. That doesn't mean I'm right by no means, but the question is, how long are they going to keep him in the game? And last week they didn't keep him in very long. Now, some of that was because he got dinged, I guess. But once Harker went in and started doing things, I don't think there was a rush to put Fajardo back in. So
they liked Harker's rhythm. He looked like he threw those like five passes in a row spread out over a little bit of time, and he looks good in the pocket. He rolls out well. He's a smart kid.
I think he's got a chance to be a good quarterback. There's no doubt.
He's got a strong arm, and
although you got to remember that the 2 touchdown drives they did have, Cody Fajardo was the quarterback. The first one was a 25-yard penalty. There was a 15-yard penalty, and then a nice run by Marcus Thigpen to get him down to the 2. And then Fajardo used his mobility and ran in, and he was efficient on the second touchdown drive. So there were some things to extract from the manner in which he performed. He and Isaac Harker combined to give the Riders more than 36 minutes of time of possession. Yeah. Ordinarily, that would signal, I think, more than 17 points and in all likelihood a victory. But the offense still demonstrated some of the tendencies that have been to its detriment, throughout last season pretty much. We saw Cody Fajardo puts a football right in the hands of Kyran Moore on a deep pass, 33 yards downfield. Doesn't make the catch. Shaq Evans has a pass a little bit behind him on the Riders late in the fourth quarter. That ball should have been caught. There was the receiving core to me looks like the receiving core I saw last year. The exception being Katie Cannon. Looks like he can provide some explosiveness, but aside from that, Shaq Evans is dropping a key pass. Kyran Moore is dropping a pass. Naaman Roosevelt is wide open and being ignored. It looks like a lot of the same old to me.
If it wasn't for William Powell, what would they have had? Like, William Powell was a stud in there. He was the guy that was carrying that offense on his back, I think. And he's going to have to continue to do that. Not that he didn't have to do that even with Zach at quarterback, but I think with having, I would think, can they hand the ball off every down? I don't know. Sooner or later they're going to have to pass, but I think William Powell, based on one game, is the real deal, and that was a good signing. And I think they got to give him the ball even more. And he's going to be motivated going back to Ottawa, regardless if he would left with the situation, more money or whatever. He's going back to play Ottawa again, so he's got to be. Why not ride him a little harder?
Or Harker.
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 I mean, 2015, the Riders had a pretty good running attack too. Jerome Messam ended up gaining 1,000 yards that year between the Rough Riders and Calgary. So the running attack was part of it. And there was Kevin Glenn in 2015 too, as Brendan mentioned. I still think Brett Smith would have been a good, decent quarterback beyond that season. But my goodness, I mean, I think the Riders knew they were going to go face this at some point, given Zach Collaros' history. But after 3 games, not only Brendan, are you dealing with the absence of your starting quarterback, how do you manage the shock factor here? Three plays into the season, kaboom. Like, how do you administer that? That's got to be so jarring to a team.
Well, it is. I think the biggest challenge you have amongst your team is your confidence in that locker room, in the people you have playing at that position now, has taken a hit. I mean, I'd have a tough time believing a lot of those players in that locker room are as confident as they used to be when Collaros was playing in that game. I'm not saying they can't win. I'm not saying they don't believe in Fajardo or anybody else. But, I mean, we're not talking about Mike Riley here or Bo Levi, where it's a significant drop-off. And they're going to have to find ways to win games without, I think, spectacular play from the quarterback initially. And that's very hard to do.
The defense gives them a chance, though.
Yeah.
It does. They may have to score like they did last year now. But they did do a good job against Hamilton. There's no doubt about it. And whether Dominique Davis can be the guy in Ottawa, again, we'll see on that. But they beat Calgary, so he's got to be, doing enough right, I guess.
But as you say, they'll have a game's film on him. Like, they're studying Dominic Davis to see what he did throw 4 picks.
Yeah, if somebody tells
exactly the second coming.
If somebody tells you that Ottawa, after losing all the players they lost during the off season, goes into Calgary and with Dominic Davis throwing 4 interceptions, and Calgary leading 21-6 at one point, how much money are you at that point wagering on Ottawa winning?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite bizarre, to be honest with you, that they ended up. I don't mean to, knock Ottawa when I say that, but I mean the odds were against them. And that's what makes football so interesting. You just never know what can happen, and maybe Isaac Harker's the next coming of, Darian Durant. Who knows?
So what do we do about Simone Lawrence? I know the CFL came out with a 2-game suspension on him for what was a vicious, dirty, probably one of the dirtiest hits I've ever seen in football. I know there's a lot of hue and cry over the 2-game suspension. I wonder in my mind if they could have handled it a lot better by simply ejecting him from that game and then following up with a 1-game suspension. The Riders gained from what he did because they get a suspension. He's gone from the game, and then the 1-game suspension covers him off. I just think, I think he needed 2 games, but I kind of wonder. I don't even know why an injection wasn't even considered that, a 25-yard penalty.
It should have been automatic.
It should have been just, boom, you're gone. And he should have been walked off the field. And I can't remember, and I can't remember being that emotionally invested in a play since 2009 when there were too many men on the field. And I've seen lots of plays. And that one I said some bad words, and I went, that's just, everything's wrong about football in that one play from what Simone Lawrence did. And regardless if he's not a past offender or whatever he is, he knows better. And he knew who he was hitting with that shoulder. And he deserved more in the game. After this fact, now they're going to be.
Then he goes on and gets a sack and a pick to make it worse.
He just rubs salt on the wounds, and I'm thinking, so now he gets 2 games. Maybe Brendan can explain what happens now, but I think he gets to peel, and then somehow he'll end up sitting 1 game or 2 games, whatever it works out to, and I don't think it's fair. You can't give him how long Zach's out for, because that just doesn't work in sports.
It invites manipulation and abuse.
Simone Lawrence, who I actually was always impressed by when I saw him in interviews and talking and stuff. He seemed like the type of guy you want representing the CFL. And right now in that one play, he's not the type of guy the CFL needs to be representing him, but he can still play and earn a paycheck, whereas Zach may not, sooner or later. Anyway.
Yeah, what happens, from your experience, Brendan, what happens now? You've dealt with players who have been suspended. What's the administrative trail or chain now?
Well, I think it's almost like an automatic sort of scenario that you deal with. It's like, and I don't know many guys that haven't appealed their issues from the commissioner, so I'm presuming that he will appeal. The scuttlebutt is it'll get lowered to 1 game and life goes on. Now, I just do not understand how a guy gets a 25-yard penalty and is allowed to stay in a football game is beyond me. It's like, when a guy gets hit behind in hockey and it's a 5-minute boarding penalty, he's automatically ejected, right? So that, and if let's say, and hopefully not, but we're going to see another hit like that again at some point in the year. If that guy, whoever it is that does that hit, is allowed to stay in a game, this league, with the way they handle this stuff, is beyond comprehension, because that is crazy that guy's not automatically ejected, like you said, Murray. And I don't care what team's involved. It's just, that's basic fundamental discipline.
Maybe it's too hard for the CFL to hold an appeal and a hearing right on the field right after the play. Because you look at all the machinations they're going through now, maybe they can't do it in the middle of a game. I'm being facetious.
I mean, it should be basically football's equivalent of a match penalty.
Yeah.
You're right. Exactly, Rob. Yeah. And I think if you get that involved right away, maybe Simone Lawrence second guesses himself on whether he's going to deliver that hit next time.
Yeah.
If I know I'm going to get kicked out of the game, because right now it's just like freeload and go.
What I'm wondering is, Hamilton is here August 1st. I had in my column today that they should tack on an additional game, and there's no way that Simone Lawrence should play in that game. One, because it could get really ugly and really silly. Who's to say the Riders won't seek retribution? Suppose they're 0-6 or 1-5 at that point, what's there for them to lose by taking a cheap shot? It could get ugly with the fans, and I think also the Rough Riders, Simone Lawrence's absence from that game would allow the Rough Riders to at least get some sort of compensation for the fact that they've lost their starting quarterback.
But I mean, by the way,
why is Simone Lawrence not suspended for August 1st? Why don't they defer one more game of that suspension?
The way the appeal process works, you probably will be just getting around to being suspended by then.
Yeah,
I remember
who knows?
how long did Duron Carter get suspended for? Wait for that one to drag out when he bumped into Rick Campbell. So maybe it's.
I think it was the same thing. I think he got 2 and it was reduced to 1, I think.
Yeah. If this is reduced to 1,
I'd be shocked.
What an absolute black eye that would be.
I know.
Other thing, I think any quarterback in the league that took that shot to the head would have been leaving that game with concussion protocol issues.
Oh, I don't disagree with you, Murray.
I don't think it's just because Zach's got issues with that.
No, I'm sure not. I mean, it obviously doesn't help. Here's the thing. Odell Willis last year knocked Zach into, next year, right?
Yeah.
And what did he get?
Nothing. I don't think he had any additional penalties.
There was nothing tacked on to that.
No.
Right.
Jackson Jeffcoat got anything for hitting Brandon Bridge?
Right.
No.
And 7 months later, it's as worse, if not a worse hit on Zach again. And the only difference is, right now it's a 2-game suspension, which is good if it stays 2, but I'm leery of that.
Yeah.
So the only thing they've changed from Odell to Lawrence is, well, okay, now we're going to give him a game. So basically, are you really serious about headshots? I don't think they are, if that's the way they're going to operate, personally.
Tell me this, though. Who's ultimately responsible? How much is Lawrence responsible for this? Like, this is player safety, and it's a opposing player, a PA member, other stuff, and he did the hit. And people are blaming the league, but when does the player safety responsibility become the player's role?
Oh, absolutely, Murray. You're totally 100% right.
It doesn't seem to be. There's a lot of vitriol about Lawrence, and rightfully so, but he's a guy who did it. Then the league is getting out, we're not doing well. Randy Ambrosi can't, even though as good a blocker he was when he played, he can't get out there quickly enough from Mexico or wherever he is to throw a block on Simone Lawrence. But I just think Simone Lawrence is a guy who created this mess by being that player, and that he's kind of, I don't think he's getting off suspended, but player safety is a two-way street, and I think we're seeing too much lack of respect from players like Simone Lawrence doing it to guys like a prone quarterback like Zach Collaros. And
I agree with you, Murray. If you look at that game, when he delivered the blow, other than a 25-yard penalty, what did Simone Lawrence suffer during that game or after that game? He got paid. He didn't lose a check, right? So he's going to end up probably losing a game check when this is all said and done. Mm-hmm. So what I meant before by, if that's the penalty for delivering head hits and head hunting and all that, players, the minute you start taking significant money out of players' pockets, they will change their ways. Trust me.
Yeah.
But if you don't make it an emphasis to control this, it ain't going to change. Yeah. And I believe they had a good chance to deliver a message with this, and maybe the 2 games will stick, and then, okay, that's a little bit better than 1 for sure. But
I don't know how much more they can. I know I'm thinking 2 games that's a lot in the CFL in an 18-game season, isn't it?
It is.
I know it doesn't match up to Zach's time away from being injured, but 2 games, you know how much? How do you plan for out your?
That's the equivalent of a 9-game suspension in the NHL.
Right, but if they do deliver a 2-game suspension, maybe the light will go on some of these guys going, I shouldn't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because right now it's free reign. You've seen it. You're going to continue to see it. And the only way you hit, I know the NHL's different with money and all that stuff, but when, whatever that guy's from Washington, Wilson, when he got 20 or 30 games, whatever he got, you know what? How many times did he get a suspension after that got disciplined on him? He didn't, right? Because it finally set home going, I can't do this anymore.
So what do you do now if you're the Rough Riders and you have Zach Collaros and you're looking ahead? He's on the 6-game injured list. The Riders have not said definitively that he has a concussion, but obviously there's a head issue here.
Yeah.
And he's had several documented concussions beforehand. What do you do? Can you even take that risk of playing him anymore? I think they have to be considering that question very seriously.
Boy, that's a really
stadium right now.
That's a really good point, Rob. I mean, that's a tough one. There's a real fine line there between. Well, at the end of the day, it's about him being a human being. Step one, right? So, and I don't know the ins and outs of all his medical history. I don't pretend to, but it seems like he's had a little bit of history with this. You'd have to really sit down with him and the medical people and have a serious chat with going, okay, Zach, I know you want to play, which I presume is true, but here's our concerns. And at some point you got to go, when's enough is enough, right? And I'm not saying it is right now, but I think we're getting pretty close to that based on the little knowledge I know about his history with injuries. But it's tough because the guy wants to keep playing football, but if you leave it up to the player, he's going to keep playing no matter what, right? So it's a real tough one because he's a big part of your team, but there is life too after football that you got to worry about.
Suppose that you're Craig Dickinson, and medically Zach Collaros is cleared. Zach wants to play. Let's presume that those situations end up those scenarios end up unfolding.
Yeah, and they could.
He wants to play and he's cleared, but you're still Craig Dickinson, and you're a tremendous human being, and you care for your players, and you're thinking, do I want this on my conscience if it happens again? What if the doctors are saying it's fine, and Zach Collaros says he wants to play, he goes out there, bang, he's down on the turf again. And if you're the coach, do you want that on your conscience, and do you want to have to wear that?
Yeah, I think Jeremy and the organization.
That's such a tough decision for them.
Yeah, you're right, Rob. And I think Jeremy and the whole organization as a whole would be the same. I think they're going to have a real tough, hard discussion or two about this going forward. And they handled everything right so far, from what I can tell. And not that my opinion means anything, but it's really it's a serious situation, unfortunately, and that's what they're dealing with. And winning football games and all that is one thing, but now we're going into another area of what's best for this individual going forward. And I don't know the ins and outs of how many he's had or whatnot, but just from afar, it looks to be a little bit of a scary situation now.
Well, if you look at it, of the 16 games for which he is dressed as a Rough Rider, counting exhibition, he's left 4 of those games after being hit in the head. Not only that, there was the game in Winnipeg last year where Jeff Hecht rocked him and he left the game. It wasn't a head injury, but 5 out of the 16 games he's played as a Rough Rider has been forced to leave after being hit. 4 of those to the head. And now there's a third head injury that's going to lead to missed playing time. And that's over not even the equivalent of a full regular season. We're talking 16 games.
And he came in ready to play this year too. And I know, so I wrote about it, that he seemed changed. He seemed more relaxed, more comfortable, more willing to step up to be the quarterback, starting quarterback, and the quarterback in the face of the team, and had all this stuff going on that he was excited about this season more than I think he was allowed to under Chris Jones. And it ends so quickly because even though last year, he said he was cleared for that Western semifinal. He could have played, even though they lied to us, to our faces many, many times that he was going to play. So he could have played then too, but maybe Chris Jones kept him up. We still don't know what happened leading up to that Winnipeg game. No, other than they lied to us. that he was going to play, and then it got out Saturday night that he wasn't. So,
Who said he was cleared, Murray?
Chris Jones said he was cleared. They said he was cleared to play in that game. And
what did Zach say?
Zach said he was playing. He said he was. Remember, they stood in that press conference with Brendan Labatt on one side and Cameron Marshall on the other, and Zach went on and on about how he was going to play. And Brendan Labatt and Cameron.
My recollection is that Zach, sorry to interrupt, was pretty non-committal about whether he was going to play.
No, there was no doubt. TSN, everyone was going ahead with Zach playing, and then Dave Naylor met up with they met some rider in the hallway at the Delta, who told him that Zach wasn't playing, and then boom! Remember Saturday night, everything.
Well, he ran into Drew Tate. That's what happened.
Okay.
Dave Taylor ran into Drew Tate.
Okay, so that explains it all. Anyway, that goes.
That whole scenario doesn't fly with me. You got your best quarterback that's been cleared supposedly by the coach and supposedly, I've been presuming, by the team, and the kid's saying he's okay, and yet he doesn't play. So let me just fast forward that.
He's at a press conference the day before the game.
Right.
And then he said after the fact that he didn't want to go in there and be ineffective. He didn't want to, if he got hurt in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, so that's why he eventually decided not to play. It's a mess, but maybe I wonder if we can just move on to something.
Riders are playing Ottawa this week.
That's
lost
weird.
in all this.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up something. Craig Dickinson was asked yesterday who's going to be Harker or Fajaro as a starting quarterback, and he said he's going to let them both play out to see what happens. And then later he said they're both going to get reps. And it was kind of an interesting because when Chris Jones played the games, you knew there were games. But Craig presented it in such a friendly manner that we weren't all going to go up in arms saying, well, just say he's going to be your starting quarterback because we can see what happened in practice. He just presented it in this manner. He went, okay, well, he's going to decide. I think it's going to be Fajardo. I don't think it's going to be.
What changed, though? Because after the game in Hamilton on Thursday, you asked Craig Dickinson who would start if Zach can't go. And unless I'm reading this incorrectly, he unequivocally said that Cody Fajardo was going to play. So what happens between Thursday and Sunday where they're now saying they're going to split reps in practice and we'll see, may the best man win?
Well,
what changed?
I'll take one from Brendan's profession that loves to say they probably watched the film.
You're probably right. They went on that plane, Rob, and they was like, oh, wait a minute.
Fajaro didn't go downfield very often. Oh, Fajaro's got funny legs. Fajaro.
I think it's more of a credit to the young kid, too. Like, he played so well that maybe it's not as a slam dunk. I still think they'll start Fajardo just because, but who knows?
Yeah,
I figured they start Fajardo, but with a really short leash.
I think they're going to bounce them both in and out. I really think. And Fajardo's going to play short yardage.
And if one quarterback is moving the ball and they get down to the 5-yard line, you can bet they're going to take that quarterback out and put the other one in, and then it'll be Brett Lowther within a matter of seconds.
Yes, pretty well.
That's the one certainty that I think we can extract.
Where was that one? It was about midfield because I looked up because I was rating. Was that the one? It was 3rd and 1 and they had that horrible play? 3rd and 2.
That was the.
The handoff.
The handoff.
Hey, everybody, we're going to hand off to William Powell play.
Yes, that was.
Yeah, that was the one.
I think I saw that one coming.
Although
coming from Mississauga,
Ted Laurent had a lot to do with that play.
Ted Laurent.
How often do you see a 300-pound offensive lineman get manhandled like that?
Yeah, why is that?
Like that's Ted Laurent. Like Brendan, do you recall a precedent for somebody just getting
thrown like that? You do see that now and then.
Wrestling.
Yeah, you do see it, not a lot, but. As your old lineman, you don't want that too much, but it happens. You get overpowered sometimes, and a player, you run 70 plays a game or 60, whatever it is. Now and then you're going to get beat. Maybe not as bad, and sometimes it happens, but people don't even notice it. So, unfortunately, on that one, it was sort of magnified by the play.
So, are the Riders without Zach, with Cody Fajardo and Harker quarterback, can they beat the Red Blacks?
Yeah, they can beat. Yeah, they can.
This looked like a shoe-in,
aren't you, Brennan?
Sorry.
Aren't you picking the Riders to win this one?
Yeah, that was more of a why not, because whatever I think is probably the opposite anyway. But
you, me both.
Well, I disagree with you. No,
they can beat them. With defense and their special teams have to be better. There's no doubt about that. I mean, that's something that's been overlooked. That needs to get fixed quick.
John Ryan wants that punt back, and so Kristen Jones wants that one. He fielded at the 1 back.
Yeah,
I wonder. And I know it's early to jump on Craig, but maybe he's got to be more. Yeah, he's really involved in special teams. But maybe he's got to let Terry Eisler coach him more. I don't know. Just something was wrong. That wasn't the special teams we've grown accustomed to.
No.
With the Riders.
They just had their window of, making errors is limited when you don't have the quarterbacks you thought you would have had playing in the game. And that's always a challenge. And in the big picture is could be tough.
It's always about quarterbacks, isn't it? No matter how much you try to expand
Yes.
our writing and our thoughts and our process, it comes back to quarterbacks and money. But
Well,
always quarterbacks.
I think
It's
so.
always-
I
interesting,
think
though,
so.
Look at
It's
the
interesting
special
you
team.
said that they
Sorry, Ben.
called Kevin, but it was over money that they couldn't get something done.
Yeah, I just read that. Yeah. I
But
think
don't they have? They're not paying top dollar for a quarterback. They are paying top dollar for a defensive tackle. How do they not have the money to do this? Especially if Zach's salary is tucked away on the 6-game injured list. How could money be an obstacle in this case?
Well, that is, and this is just me, the old GM coming out in me. That's a position where is you got to make that work because it's too important of a position for your team to not function. And they're going to roll the dice and they're going to bet on those guys being able to do the job. But if they don't win one of these next 2 games, I'm not saying they will, but
they're home for a whole stretch, though, a long stretch. 3
yeah,
weeks,
but
they're gonna-
Murray, if they're 0-4 and you're still running out Fajardo and Harker and they're not winning, is that going to, this is big picture, is that going to be accepted over there?
Well, I think we just have to look back at 15 and say no.
But what if they're 0-4, but at least the quarterbacks are playing well and showing some promise?
Oh, then that's okay. I mean, if
That's
you're moving
okay.
the ball and you're scoring, 40, 30 points a game and you're marching the ball for 400 yards, I don't think anybody could argue that.
After Darian got hurt in 2015, offense still wasn't the problem for a number of weeks.
No, we couldn't stop your touch football team. And they couldn't tackle anity either, if I recall. But anyway,
Is that Junior Murtaugh's big game?
That was later in the year.
I was fired by then. I'm not responsible for that. I plead the fifth. I don't even know who he was.
Are you accountable for the 64-yard field goal attempt?
Oh gosh, what a year!
That was under the tab and watch.
Yeah, I know.
But
I told Corey to
64-yard
punt.
field goal attempt by the punter.
How about we make it? But how'd 13 go? Make it happier times.
13 was okay. But, I mean, when we lost our running back, those 4 games when we lost Sheets, our team took a dip, right? And that was with our running back. So you transfer that to a quarterback, voila, right?
Yep.
You can't survive it. We proved that in 14 and 15. You just, I mean, you can survive it, I guess, but, boy, it makes it a lot more difficult. And I don't wish that on anybody.
Well,
1991 too. Ken Austin gets hurt in the first game of the season against Edmonton. Not long after that, John Gregory's fired.
Right.
So it's the third time it's happened to the Riders where they've lost a quarterback in the first game of the season. And coaches have been fired the first 2 times that's happened. It's not going to happen to Craig Dickinson,
No.
but it does portend a bad year. It's tough to spin out of that.
I did have a flashback when Kevin Durant popped his Achilles in that WNBA Finals to back to 15 when Darren Durant got hurt. When it looked like no one was anywhere near him.
Not to go goofy here, but
Durant.
to take a dip, like Murray, you just said with Durant, if you look at baseball and you look at, the Seattle Mariners or the Toronto Blue Jays as an example, they're going younger and they're basically getting rid of all their veteran players and all their good players, and they're vouching to go young. And where I'm going with this is they're not going to win, but that fan base is going to take a hit. Like the Blue Jays aren't the game in town anymore in Toronto, I'm afraid, right? Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reason for that is they're losing. Yes, they have a couple young good guys that might be good in 2-3 years. Yeah, that's fine. But where I'm going with this with CFL related, I don't recall a CFL team ever going, okay, we're just going to start from scratch, go young, we're going to lose a lot of games, but next year we'll be better. I don't recall a team ever doing that in the league.
They tried it in '79 when Ron Lancaster was the head coach.
How'd that work?
They lived with that in 1980. They went 2-14 both years. Then Ronnie leaves. Joe Farragelli reaps the benefits of the groundwork that Ronnie had laid, and they go 9-7. And Joe Farragelli's the coach of the year. But Ronnie had Hank Dorsch as a GM in '79, Jim Spavital in 1980. They bit the bullet with a young team, a young offensive line especially, and eventually there were benefits to be derived from that. But the people who made those tough decisions weren't around to share in the momentary triumphs that there were in 1981.
Not saying that Jeremy O'Day and Craig aren't trying to win every year, but there's also a Grey Cup here next year. And
knowing those two, Murray, those guys are right now trying to figure out how to win every game
this weekend.
There's no doubt. And then that's what you have. That's what you want in a head coach and GM. You want them to focus like that. You're right about 2020. Everybody knows that. But if you want to get into that, okay, let's project who's going to be their starting quarterback in 2020. Cody Fajardo? I doubt it.
I doubt it.
Zach Collaros? I doubt it. There's one guy that might be, and it's Harker, right? So let's hope he can work out for them.
If there's a year to bite the bullet, though, and as tough as it is to do,
you're
is
right,
this
Rob.
The one? It's sort of a transitional year. I mean, in mid-January, they had to change their thinking with everything. You've got a first-year head coach, you got a first-year defensive coordinator, you got a first-year general manager. If you subtract the interim tenure that Jeremy O'Day had in 2015, you can give this regime a bit of a mulligan for this year if they try to develop a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
That's the one card that they can play that card this year. They can't play that card next year with the Grey Cup here, but if they try to sell people on, look, we're trying to build something here. We haven't developed a lot of young quarterbacks over the years. Here's our opportunity, and here's the saving grace, or perhaps a silver lining in all this. Maybe people will subscribe to that.
Here's a dark cloud hangs if he isn't the guy.
Well, I was just going to say.
Then they know. They know at the end of the year what they've got to do.
There really isn't a backup out there. Like, legitimately, no. Kevin Glenn, Darian Durant, all these names being thrown. And Craig Dickinson addressed that yesterday. He said, we called everybody on our list, and this is what we have as we're going with Brian Bennett. There's not a whole lot of backup quarterbacks out there that under the age of 35 who are available, and I think they're kind of stuck with the bed they're in. They made this decision way back when they couldn't get, well, the decision was made for them when Bo Levi decided to not take less money and go back to Calgary, and the Riders end up in this position. So.
Well, what I don't really quite get on that was, you're right, Murray, what you said, but they ended up signing the third stringer in BC, and they didn't even offer the second stringer a contract.
Yes.
And I'm not saying Jonathan Jennings is the greatest thing going, but knowing what your situation is with Collaros going into the year, did you really think Fajardo was going to be the answer at backup quarterback, like we did with Kevin Glenn in 15? And if they did, more power to them. And he still might turn out that way. I have nothing against the kid. Mm-hmm. Just on first blush, though, and against Hamilton, it was like, yeah. And hey, it comes down to this. If they're in October and they're, 4 or 5 wins and the people are still paying the money to come watch the games, hey, no problem. I know which way I'd be betting on that. Mm-hmm. People want to win. Sure. And coaches and GMs are paid to win. And you're right, Rob. You can get a mulligan this year because of the situation. But you better have the right guy that you're grooming, because come June of next year, with a Grey Cup in your backyard, trust me, I can relate to this. Rob, you were there in 95 or whatever year that was, right?
I've been around since...
Well, caveman.
I was there in 95.
But remember the year? You guys remember that year. We were terrible that year.
Yeah.
When we hosted the Grey Cup. And that didn't go over very well.
No, right from the outset, that season was going nowhere.
Biggest game was against Calgary when 55,000 people were in the stands.
Right. It just depends on the philosophy of what they want to do. If they want to groom the guy, and hopefully he is the guy, he has to be really. They can do that for sure. But if you struggle and mumble and like we did in 15, I can vouch for that. 0-9 doesn't go over very well there, no matter what the situation.
If you look at it too, it's a little incongruous, because you'd be trying to groom a young quarterback at the same time that you are the oldest team in the league with an average of 28 point whatever years. So
I think Brendan cares about age.
You're built to win now in terms of your demographic, but suddenly you got a young quarterback surrounded by 30-year-olds all over the place.
See, Montreal, you could look at, and don't laugh when I say this, but when they got their hero quarterback in Manziel, they haven't found a guy since Cavillo left, in reality, right? And look at that fan base. It's just disintegrated and disintegrated and disintegrated. And why? Because they lose.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And if Saskatchewan can, I'm not saying they're going to lose or anything like that, but I think it's a very slippery slope if you start, struggling. And I guess here's the question. Then why would they call Kevin Glenn?
Yeah,
true.
What's the philosophy then? So if Kevin Glenn says, I'll pay for 50, is Kevin Glenn there today? Probably, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that tells me they still want to win right now, which I do not blame them for one bit.
Absolutely.
But it sort of goes against the grain of throwing the year away, right? Yeah. I don't know. Easy for me to say.
we should let you get to rider practice.
Yes,
We're
I could.
recording this over noon hour on a Monday, and the riders are available to the media in a bit. So,
Sorry,
Murray, any
Mary.
final thoughts before we grant you your leave?
I would like to say congratulations to the Toronto Raptors.
So you've been a dedicated Rider
Ugh.
Raptor fan for at least a week.
I know. What a fun ride it's
Bandwagon
been.
jumper.
I know we're not supposed to.
Ooh.
I know we're not supposed to date this, but watching the parade today, they're parking on the side of the Gardner. You ever been on the Gardner on a Monday? They go fast, and people are signing and parking on the side of the Gardner to watch a parade for the Raptors. So cool. I think it's an incredible statement, and to see the diversity, and I know I don't use that word a lot, of Canadian fans that cheered on the Raptors, and it was a fun ride. Now I just got to get my Golden Knights back up on top, and we'll be fine.
Brendan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, you're talking to believe it or not, you guys are talking to a San Antonio Spurs fan, so you can imagine what I think of the Toronto Raptors. And specifically one specific hero
One
of
player
them.
in particular?
Yeah, one hero of the
Two
country
players.
that's a total bum in San Antonio.
Denny Green? No.
No, he's a good guy.
I support Canada's team, the Denver Nuggets, who actually have a Canadian who plays Jamal Murray from Kitchener, Ontario. So
Okay.
Denver Nuggets 2020 NBA champions. For Murray McCormick, Brendan, thank you so much for being with us. It's
You're
been
welcome.
great to have you with us, and your column will appear, I guarantee you, in Tuesday's paper and in all subsequent Tuesdays throughout the football
Subscriptions are falling, I hear.
season. No, that's my fault.
Save me some space, eh? You're right long.
Sorry, Murray.
For Murray McCormick, for Brendan Tamman, I'm Rob Vanstone, and we'll do this again next week with number 56. And thank you, Roger Aldag, as well, for being with us. Take care.